6 p.m. Please conduct the roll.
President Holt,
Present.
Vice President Wedge,
Present.
Clerk Brickler,
Present.
Trustee Dowd. Present. Trustee Ross.
Present.
Trustee Dowd, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In closed session, the board directed the district to reject a claim discussed in anticipated litigation item 1 and no action taken regarding item 2. And I move that we approve the agenda.
President Holt, I would like to pull a few items.
Absolutely.
I would like to pull items 11B, 11C, and 11E.
What were those again?
11B, 11C, and 11E.
I move that we approve the agenda with the recommended items pulled.
And I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All in favor? Okay, moving to item 6A. We've got special presentation from Janine Hughes.
So Director Hughes has been with Auburn Union for 2 years, and she is going to bring to you her annual student support update.
Okay. Good evening, President Holt, Vice President Wedge, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Designee Lucy Garcia. I am Janine Hughes, and tonight I'm going to give you an update on our student support department. And I forgot my clickers. Okay, so what is student support? In every single district, student support is a little bit different. And so what is it in Auburn Union? So student support in our district encompasses nursing, special education, mental health wellness, PBIS or positive behavior support, our foster students, our homeless families, our SST process, our 504s, specialized transportation for those who qualify, behavior, and new and upcoming for this next year, community schools. And so in regards to our mental health and social emotional wellness, that is tied to our strategic goal 2. And so that involves Care Solace, which is a agency that we partnered with to provide linkages to mental health supports. We have preventative and responsive mental health services. We have trauma-informed practices. Students have access to different professionals, including our wellness teams, our psychologist, our school counselor. We have our toolbox curriculum and supports. And then we also have required IEP health screenings, and then our collaboration with PCOE. And so our considerations for mental health and wellness, like what has that looked like this last year? So suicide assessments right off the bat, there's been an increase in our suicide risk assessments that we have completed this school year because of the intensive needs of just mental health overall that exist. This year, PCOE implemented MCT team in the area. That's our mobile crisis team. And so prior to us having that in our community, what would happen is if we did a suicide assessment and that was a student that was high risk, we would actually call law enforcement, and law enforcement would support us with that. Now we have the mobile crisis unit that actually, or mobile crisis team that actually supports and comes and does that assessment and works with us in regards to that. We have collaboration with our PCOE wellness team partners. School consolidations has definitely, affected people on their social, emotional, and mental health needs. We've seen a huge increase in our students in anxiety this year. And then just that need for staff support and staff wellness as well. That's just something that we're constantly talking about. We have a huge increase in our students that are homeless, our families. And so that's been a huge need and a huge focus for us this year. And then just increase in students in foster care. So student decision-making and behavior. And so that is tied to our strategic goal 7. That includes our PBAS. We have social skills training that's in regards to that. We have our toolbox. We have social emotional lessons that occur in the classrooms, both from teachers and then our wellness teams, and also our own mental health specialist. And we implemented restorative practices at the beginning of this year. And so that is completed throughout the whole district. And then again, all of that is under our MTSS umbrella, which is again, that whole child. So that encompasses student behavior, social, emotional, and that academic piece. Considerations for special education. So under that, we have, our assessments, we have learning loss for students that came back after COVID. We have our behavior and social emotional needs, those inclusive practices that we really try to support our schools as a whole, just to really make sure our students with disabilities get access to those experiences. We have universal TK that is up and coming. We have next year planning that we're looking at and how we really serve our students with disabilities. We're looking at program placement, that continuum of support, and making sure that we are meeting all students depending on where their need as far as their disabilities, and always looking at that least restrictive environment for students. Okay, special education data. So this is the data, and this was taken 3 weeks ago. So students with IEPs, we have a total of 284 students within the district that have IEPs. When you see the categories of disability, that is their primary disability. Some students may have, for example, like autism and speech and something else. So we have 35 students that their primary disability is autism. We have 10 with intellectual disability, 49 other health impairment, specific learning disability. We have 61. We have 100 students that have speech as their primary disability. And then currently we have in the preschool program, we have 47 students, 19 in class, 28 speech. And then for the IEP facilitation, what I do is I take that teacher with the highest caseload. Okay, so as far as that RSP support, and that is at Auburn Elementary, and that student has ran 30 IEPs this year. Assessments, we have 3 psychologists. They have done 149 assessments this year. That includes that initial assessment, and then that assessment that is required every 3 years. And then we have our speech therapists that have done a total of 136. So this slide just provides a few definitions of what some of those areas of eligibility are. I'm not going to go through those, but you have those in your in the presentation. Family engagements, that's tied to our strategic goal 7. And so that includes, our work with our student families through the IEP process, the 504 plan, our SST process, all wellness centers, our community liaison program, and then our upcoming community schools. So our community liaison, so what is some of the highlights that they have done this year? So Parent Project, so they collaborated with Latino leadership, and they actually provided that Parent Project training for families. We had 18 families attend. So it was all done in Spanish. And so that's just a wonderful thing that we did. So working with other organizations in town to really make sure that our students have access to resources as needed. And then they've been also attending those ELAC meetings to support families at all the school sites. So SST process. So this is what our SST form looks like, right? So what is an SST? It's that student success team. So when we identify students that are struggling in that general ed setting, we come together as a team. We look at, what are their strengths, what are their challenges, and what do we need to support students? We have that meeting. We come together as a team, list all of those out, and then come back later to see how well those interventions are working, and if we need to either bring it down a notch or step up that intervention for that student. Next, we have our 504 plans. So a student that's eligible under that 504 plan is a student that has a physical or mental impairment that's really affecting or limiting their daily life, such as learning. That eligibility needs to be in a needs to have a variety of information from a variety of sources. So for example, let's talk about like hyperactivity. So we need to be able to see that in the classroom, maybe on the playground, and maybe even at home, right? So we're really looking at how that hyperactivity is actually affecting that specific student. Community schools. So we recently got awarded the community schools grant, which I'm super excited about. And so that is really that whole child approach, which is really just at the heart of what Auburn does. So it's that improvement strategy where we work with families and teachers and to really look at that whole child learning, whole child instruction for a student. We can partner with community agencies to make sure that we're really cutting down those barriers that students have in regards to engagement, attendance, and all of those things that are really stopping that student from coming to school or engaging in their learning. The actual definition of a community school is those integrated support services. So that can include health, mental health, access to supports for, homeless families, things like that. And then that family and community engagement, the collaborative leadership and practices for all educators. So making sure everybody is knowledgeable about that piece. And then that extended learning opportunities for students. And that is it. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
Congratulations on the community schools planning grant. I love the concept of having those integrated services offered on our campuses and wanted to get a little bit more information about what we might expect in the upcoming years, because I understand
Absolutely.
this isn't necessarily the money to implement a community school, but it's some period of time
Right.
to maybe investigate that option.
So it's a series of 2 grants. And so the first grant is that planning grant, and that's the 2-year planning grant, which is what we got awarded. And so what we do from there is really work with the team that we put in place in regards to what is the needs assessment for our specific community and what are our assets, right? What do we have that's working? What do we have that's not working? And then from there, we apply for the implementation grant, which is another 5 years. And then that's when we implement basically the community schools grant piece. And it's really cutting down, like I said, on those barriers, creating those linkages, you can have, for example, if families have not a lot of access to dental, let's say, we could do that piece where we have dental, collaborate with the dental offices and actually have them come to campus and support our students that way. So things like that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm a little curious, and this, trouble, I know it's not on us, but the trends in suicide you're talking about.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious if you can speak to some of those trends. Are we seeing one, is it decreasing in age groups? Are we seeing an increase in certain age levels?
Right. It's probably not gonna be surprised, but the increase is at the middle school level. And so it's been just a real big increase. And I will say that's the amount of assessments that we're doing, right? So I think that there's 2 things. Definitely our students are hurting, right? But the other piece is too, we're catching those things, right? We have a specific counseling referral process here at EB Kane. And so we're making sure that we're triaging those things and, really working together in that support network to make sure that we catch those things before they get to that severe level.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure, my mic's on. First of all, thank you so much for your hard work. I hear your name and so much light around these schools, and I'm just really grateful that you're here working with us. And you mentioned the mobile crisis team, and that just really seemed of interest to me, like how, efficient are they? How effective? Have we used them? Is it working? How fast?
Yeah, so it really depends on how busy they are, because they serve the whole community of Auburn. It's not just, dedicated to our district.
Okay.
And they do, I can't remember the exact hours, but it goes into the evening too. And so family and on the weekends. And so families have the opportunity to actually call the mobile crisis unit then. So sometimes, we've had situations where we've had multiple mobile crisis units out at the same time at different schools. So we have had that occur. Sometimes they will tell you though, hey, we can't come out right now, call law enforcement because they are dealing with, some other event in the community. But I will say it's definitely added a very positive layer to the system when we are doing those suicide assessments.
That's great. And then my other question was on restorative practice, because I'm just curious, there's so many different ways to use that. What does that look like for our schools?
So I would say every school is at a little bit of a different
Right.
place, but we rolled that out at the beginning of the year, kind of as a whole district. And then we've had a little community of practice as far as that restorative practice piece. And then also our principals have recently actually gone through the training fully themselves. And so they really build on those restorative circle pieces. I know Dr. Balsana Wright has told me, some of her students actually say, hey, I want to do that restorative circle thing. And so they're actually building that skill set to really build those skills to just further advance themselves, right? Suspension is one thing, right? And that's definitely needed in some areas, but how do we help students not make the same mistakes and grow from their experiences and build those relationships for being, positive citizens in the future?
Okay, and then I have one more question unless anybody else. My last question is, way back in the day, we used to have our special ed was in-house. And we had all these great educators, and we'd actually have them go out to hire them out to different districts. And is that something we would ever consider again, or something we would look at, or it's just too hard right now?
If we had the staff to do that, I would say that, for example, we have our physical therapist that we actually do share. She's with us a couple days, and then she's actually with the county office a few days a week. And so we do things like that. There's been some of our smaller districts that will reach out and, they might need an assessment from a physical therapist or, the adaptive PE teacher or something like that. And we really try to support, the smaller districts in regards to some of that. So we do work together. I'm part of that small school small school collaborative as far as special education. And we get together once every other month. And really just talk about needs for some of those smaller districts.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 7, public comment. Just a reminder, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per individual, and then 20 minutes overall length. Anything beyond 20 minutes, we will extend to the end of the meeting if you still want to make that comment.
I would like to make a request regarding public comment.
Mhm.
Our past practice was that if if a public comment was sent via email, we would read it aloud in our meetings. And then in the last few months, we've had incredibly long meetings. Sometimes the public comment was several hours of in-person comments. So we've stopped reading the emailed comments, and I would like to request that we go back to our past practice of reading the emailed comments so that we're making sure they're being heard.
Okay, so I think we can discuss that. I don't think this is the time to do that, but that could be discussed regarding.
I can make a new request if that's what I need to do to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that will take board action to address that.
But I don't think that board action occurred to change the practice in the first place.
Well, it also went beyond the timeline at the time. But yeah, that's something we can look at. Okay. That being said, is there public comment?
Okay, starting over. My name is Mark Horton. I live on Huntley Avenue. I've been there for some time. And on December 24th or 25th, a tree on the Alta Vista property smashed my vintage lovely travel trailer. And I use it for work and as an office. And I turned in a property damage claim, which was ignored for a month. I called in several times. No response. It then got passed along to Elizabeth, who did return my calls, and we discussed a couple of matters, but among which I think the most salient issue for me was I tacitly assumed that you folks are governed by the same California laws that require both statutory limits for considering damage, insurance claims, and also well, basically that you have in California, if you have car accidents, you got 80 to 85 days to come up with a resolution to such a claim. You folks, since you're self-insured, aren't constrained by that. You're self-ultimate in that level, at least as far as I was able to solicit from Elizabeth. And so I, again, turned in a claim, and I haven't heard any kind of decision on it. And in other arenas, other consumer rights areas, you do have certain rights concerning statutory limits, timeliness, those sorts of things. And again, you folks, I don't think, unless I didn't read the law, I didn't study it, but I would hope that eventually there were other people involved. Justin Carrion came out and observed the damage. He, without solicitation, stated to my landlord that, yes, we should have taken care of that last fall when we did some arbor, prevention. They cut down some trees, and we didn't. And your trailer smashed. Oh well. So okay, Justin's a nice guy. He did his job. And then there's another overarching sentiment here, beside my own self-interest bit, which is the nature trail is not being used much because it's littered with a lot of down and dead trees, right? I hardly see anybody out there anymore. Last week, 4 people were walking along, 2 children, 2 adults. And when they got to 2 large trees, which are diseased and down, and they're across the trail, the kids said, are we supposed to crawl over these or crawl under them? It's not an obstacle course, it's a nature trail, right? Yeah, it deserves more circumspection than simply saying, yeah, we should have done that, or it's a danger zone. It looks like a bomb went off over there. And I'm a big advocate of, access to nature, etc. There. In this case, it's self-defeating. I wish it was open to more people, and it's simply better. Okay. Any response?
Thank you. It wasn't on the
Okay, one
agenda.
last thing, please look favorably on my plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted, he asked for a response. I think we need to be clear that we aren't, because of the way our agendas are set, we're not allowed to respond other than saying that we can ask staff to follow up.
Okay. Was there any additional public comment that didn't submit a card? No, that's not related to an agenda item. So moving to item 8A, the Auburn Union Teachers Association.
Good evening, President Holt, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Designee Lucci Garcia. I was pleased to be invited to have a conversation with the FCMAT team, who is currently holding interviews to run an at-risk assessment for the district due to the letter from PCOE in February of 2023. While this opportunity is done independently, not through the district or the county, I look forward to their hearing and findings. But more importantly, what will the board decide to do? It is your responsibility to oversee the district and make financial decisions, hiring practices, facilities and maintenance decisions, and the overall well-being of the district affairs. How will you note areas of risk and communicate those? How will you move forward in trying to reduce further risk to the district? And what will this look like? Where is the accountability and who is responsible for adhering and making these changes to the district for a more stable and sustainable future? Respectfully, Sarah Liebert, AUTA President.
Thank you. And do we have a representative from CSEA? Stephen? Okay, and moving on to item 9, comments from the board and the superintendent designee.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that Staff Appreciation Week will be May 8th through 12th this year. The Auburn Union School District expresses appreciation to our certificated, classified, and confidential staff, our nurses, our licensed professionals, and administrators for their dedication to our students. So we will be handing out, we'll be taking some goodies around during that week to celebrate our employees.
Great, thank you. And other comments from members of the board? Are they, let's finish comment, our comment first, and then we can revisit that. Thank you.
Okay, first I wanted to say thank you to Staples. I had worked with the manager on a unrelated project, and so she reached out to me about a donation. They donated 560 boxes of school supplies, and so it was really fun to get to go to the Staples in person and load them up. Took me 2 trips, and just be able to thank the staff in person. But I just it's part of our donation report, but I think we're all very grateful for the many times that our community partners and businesses display such generosity and support for our students and staff. I am heavily involved with the Auburn Education Foundation. They are celebrating 40 years of supporting students and doing the extra things that may not be within school budgets, like focused on enrichment, programs like Symphony Goes to School, STEAM, all of the science and technology, curricular add-ons and materials that classes may need. And there are some great programs that have been implemented through the generosity of the community through Auburn Education Foundation to our students. For example, the Changemakers program at Skyridge is both a social emotional learning program and also a physical health program. So there's just so much good work being done in our schools, and Auburn Education Foundation is participating in the Big Day of Giving. It's a kind of region-wide effort. It's on Thursday, May 4th. There's going to be an event that's open to the public. It's a no-host event. It's from 4 to 7 p.m. on May 4th, and there will be student performances. There will be likely music and dance, and we're grateful for the students and their families for coming out to that event. The final thing I wanted to talk about is that it's about one of our board policies about how items are put onto our agendas. I made a request following board policy 9322 that states that any board member may request that a matter within the jurisdiction of the board be placed on the agenda of a regular meeting. I submitted my request in writing more than 2 weeks before the scheduled meeting date, and was denied the opportunity to have an expert come in and speak to us about charters and how to really utilize a charter school as an asset for our district in a way that supports the students in our district. And I'm asking that we apply these board policies more evenly across all of the trustees, and just kind of question why we don't have equal access as trustees to make these requests and have these requests be honored. I understand that there's a desire to keep our board meetings brief because it's been rough. We've had very long meetings in the last few months as we've been making really consequential decisions. But so I wanted to ask that given that the past practice in our last several meetings has been that trustees have drawn on individuals in the crowd to come up and give comment or to inform a matter, that I have the opportunity to do the same tonight. So some recent examples: at the last meeting, a trustee put a resolution on the agenda. He then was able to bring a doctor forward to give some comments on that matter and was able to interact with the board. Previously, one of the teachers was called in to make comments and to respond to questions from the board. So my request tonight is that even though I wasn't able to get my agenda item on, that I have the opportunity. I've invited Kathy Doherty. She is a former superintendent of the Newcastle Elementary School District. I'm really grateful that she's willing to be here as a consultant and a charter expert to help advise us. And she's, pro bono, attending our meeting tonight. So I'm asking that she be able to interact with the board when we discuss the Alta Vista agenda item.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask though, by what metric, what data do you have to confirm your position that this standard is being applied unfairly to you? How many agenda items have been added by trustees? And how many have been denied to you?
I mean, I've seen past practice and even the last meeting where other trustees have been able to get items on the agenda.
There's been one item added, right, by request.
I think that there have been
that you're
more.
aware of. You're not aware of all the denials, correct?
I'm not privy to that sort of information.
Right. So I'll just suggest that the practice may not be being applied unfairly. And I hope you would consider that,
Sure.
since you don't have all the information.
I think that there was also a lack of responsiveness. I had to do a lot of follow-up. I've made phone calls that weren't returned. It didn't seem to follow our board policy and the intention of being responsive to a trustee request.
Understood. So, and that ties into something I want to discuss though too, which is that we do owe the public more brief meetings. We've had meetings that have gone several hours in recent months, but some of that has been with very good reason. Some of the issues we've been discussing have been sensitive, and there's been a lot of public input. And I think as a board, we felt that it was important that we did hear from everybody who was able to come to our meetings and that wanted to provide input on some of these issues. So moving forward, as sensitive things come up, I think we owe it to the public to try to hear everybody as best we can, but we have to weigh that against some of the accessibility, the issues that come up with long meetings. Other recent public comment, described how it's difficult to try to stay up till 1:30 in the morning and watch a Zoom meeting, and really just out of the question. So to address that, one of the things we did is now we are putting our meetings on YouTube. But that may not be feasible in real time. You might have to come back and watch that later. So we do owe it to the public to try to keep brief, concise meetings, stay on task and stay on topic. And I think that's something that we are working on. So thank you. Is there other comment?
Yeah, I have one comment. I want to give a quick update on the resolution that was passed last month on AB 659. So as that stands now, it has been amended. So Auburn Union School District, along with several other school districts and other people that actually put in opposition letters on that. So it has been amended. So as it stands now, they took out where it's going to be mandatory for the HPV vaccine, 8th grade and up. But new language has been added in there that is going to be required for college age students. And so I'm still tracking that. It still hasn't been scheduled for a hearing. So I just wanted to thank the board for passing that resolution, because it definitely, the writer definitely did hear us on that.
To follow up on that, thank you, Jason, for bringing in that expert that helped show us what was going on. And President Holt, thank you for bringing in that advanced teacher to help us make decisions in that. And I would love to hear Sarah's expert on charter come in and talk to us, because all the knowledge we can get, we really need that. I'd also just like to thank the teachers and the staff right now. Really, really take a second to thank them for all their dedication to our children. You have to excuse my allergies. I'm losing my voice. But all the dedication that they have to our students and our principals for helping out our staff through this difficult time, and our educators. And I just can't thank you guys enough. I'm at every single school and I still see every teacher with a smile on their face. I don't know how y'all do it. Our staff in the front office, I feel so much joy walking in these offices. So I just really want to thank you from that standpoint as a mom and as a board member, how encouraging it is just to know that our educators and our staff and our principals really care. So thank you for that. And I do want to let you know just a little fun stuff. May 5th, we're doing a drama show at Skyridge, and Miss McDonald, Mr. Pack, and we've been working with the 1st and 3rd graders. So May 5th, if you want to come out and check out our performance. And then May 21st, Jim Kepfer and I will be doing a show at the State Theater, and we'll be working with some of our students from Evie Kane from the band. And we actually have a youth record label for the youth, by the youth. And I have about 20 students that are building this youth record label at Evie Kane. And it's phenomenal to see these students just eager and excited to build something. So they will be there performing on May 21st. We have 4 artists signed to Gold Records. They're very talented. And so May 21st, I'm just hoping you guys put that on your calendar for some fun and excitement in the community.
Sorry, I'm coughing too, enjoying these allergies. Any additional comment? Okay. So the public comment that we missed, going back to that. Oh, and you were sitting here.
Yeah. I thought it might have got moved to a different, it was more appropriate on a different matter, but I don't mind speaking. Thank you, the board, designee Superintendent Lucy Garcia. My name is Antonio Valdez. I'm an attorney with Legal Services in Northern California. I think you have all received an email from me right before spring break. Apologize for the timing, but it just seemed relevant at the time where we were able to get it out. I'm working with the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights and California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, representing multiple families and the family group, Familias de Rock Creek, and asking that the board reconsider its decision regarding the closure of Rock Creek School. And as I pointed out in my letter, I think there are a lot of considerations that either the board didn't have the information on, or the analysis wasn't done, that I felt that were important for you all to know in order to, because I don't think the decision has to be finalized just yet. I think more discussion could be had. We're very open to having that discussion, and look forward to hearing from you all soon. And that's all I wanted to mention today. Thank you.
Thank you. As long as we revisited it, was there? Oh, there is more. Okay.
Really.
Okay. So was there any additional public comment that we missed? Okay.
So I have a couple of comments on 2 topics. First, I want to thank you guys for the first time, for the board members that agreed to sign that resolution. A lot of you guys don't know, but my son was vaccine injured at 2 months. He was hospitalized. And to vote against, I hear equal access constantly here. I hear equity here. But your vote, Sarah, was going to kick me out of my son having equal access to school. My daughter, equal access to school. And decisions that take the rights away from parents has to come back to our local decisions, and letting the state know that parents get to make the decisions for their kids, not the state, not the Department of Ed, parents. And to force medical intervention on my child for an education that I pay for. I pay federal and state taxes that fund this school. And to pass laws that kick my son out because there isn't a doctor that will sign a medical exemption for him. So my choices are to not let him go to school after 7th grade, homeschool and quit my job, or leave the state. Your decision highly impacted me, Sarah. I respect you highly, but that decision was so baffling to me that you would allow the state to put that decision in my son's hands. That is not okay to talk about equal access with Rock Creek closing. Meanwhile, we make decisions to kick kids out of school, out of education, period, to leave them for homeschool or leave the state. Those are the options for families like me. So I would really hope that moving forward, we continue to push back on states' policies, continuing resolutions, making those collaborations with other districts, because it does make an impact for families like me. I am here, I'm a part of this community. I come to these board meetings. I am a part of this. My kids are a part of this community. And to have a board member vote against me and my family was devastating. I couldn't believe it, honestly. That was so hurtful for families like me. And trust me, I'm not the only one. I'm just the only one here talking about it. So I just moving forward, I would love to see more because we have more that are coming where the wellness centers and counselors can call CPS and take custody of our kids. That's also on the board now. So we need to all be really paying attention to state legislation right now because what's coming up is absolutely insane. And I want to thank you guys very much for putting the message out to the state because it was so important for families like me. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you. All right. Now, since we did reopen it for public comment, is there any additional public comment not tied to an agenda item before we move forward? All right, seeing none. All right, seeing none, we'll move forward. Okay, moving on to agenda item 10. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda?
I was hoping to pull the personnel report so we could acknowledge some of our retirees and other kind of key individuals, or I mean, they're all key individuals. And I just had some questions about J2, which is the speech and language pathologist assistant.
Okay.
I'd also like to pull J4 just for some clarifying questions.
Okay. Any other additional requests? All right, do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the rest of the items on the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Okay, agenda item 10C.
All right, just gonna pull it up. I know at the very least, there were so many contributors to our school communities on this report, but I wanted to acknowledge a couple that stood out to me were the retirement of Shirley Paris and Kelly Bennett. And want to just thank them for their service to our district and to the E.V. Kane students. Are there others who wish to identify any of these? I guess it was also kind of I just wanted to acknowledge with a heavy heart that we see the resignation of two of our principals, and wanted to really recognize and thank Erin Fischetti and Diana Wilson for their incredible work with our students and with our staff. And there's just so many folks on here, but I wanted to at least take a moment and thank all of our staff for moving on. Ooh, Jackie Davis also is retiring, I noticed, so I don't want to miss Jackie. Some just longtime AUSD employees who are moving on. I think that Ms. Paris says that she's not retiring, but she's graduating from E.V. Kane, so we'll see her on the stage.
And I believe you also asked to pull J2.
Yeah, do we need to vote on this one now? Yes. I move that we approve item 10C, the personnel report.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Let's see, my question on item J2. I mean, I understand that our costs for providing special education services are rising and we are facing staffing shortages. There's multiple positions that are very difficult to fill. And so, but I guess I know whenever possible, we're trying to bring services in-house. And I just wanted to get a little bit of more information because I wasn't sure exactly how much a speech and language pathologist assistant might earn. And so I just did a Google search in our area and I saw that there's a school district in Grass Valley, for example, that's trying to hire for about $23 an hour. And when we are forced to contract out for the services, that there's a large differential in the price. And so it looks like the Solient contract is about $85 per hour. So I know you're doing everything you can to contain costs and to get students the services that they deserve, but I was hoping we could at least hear a little bit more about the background
Absolutely.
on this item.
Absolutely. So throughout my entire career, and I've been in special education now for 18 years, finding speech therapists in-house has been extremely difficult. COVID, as you can imagine, made that just all the more harder, right? And so finding speech therapist or SLPAs, speech and pathology assistants, is very challenging. And so right now we have, as far as our own staff, we have one SLP and one SLPA that are ours, and that's it. And so what we try to do is we try to find any combo we can with SLPs and SLPAs to make sure that students' needs are met. Okay. And so that's what we try to do. We're continuing to have those conversations in regards to, we continue to try to hire internally. And I'll just give you one example. We had interviews, 3 or 4 weeks ago now, where we had 3 SLPs that were on that day to interview. All 3 canceled because they found jobs like that. A lot of SLPs in the world since COVID are doing virtual. We all know for speech that is not what is best for our kids, is to do virtual speech, right? We need people in-house. So we continue to try to hire in-house, but just like any other district, we have to hire out for that. We partner with different contracting agencies. That was what we try to do because that just gives you a better chance of, finding people also.
Is there a possibility of working with, I guess it'd be CSEA to raise how much they make? Because even paying 25 compared to 85 is a huge difference. Is that renegotiable?
I mean, we can definitely work with our bargaining teams to look at that. And I'm going to tell you it's not a salary issue. A lot of SLPs and SLPAs want to work with contracting agencies, and also the programs for SLPs and SLPAs, they're very small. So, and I'll just give you an example. So I've had an SLPA for me in the past that tried to apply to get into the speech program 3 times, and she got denied each time because the programs only take so many students also. And then a lot of those students are choosing to go like the medical route as well. And so it's just a combination of all of that just challenges all of us in special education, not just us, and finding those people in-house.
So it's more of like a workforce pipeline
Yep.
issue. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. But at the same time, you're concurrently trying to hire, but this is like we have to put this in place to make sure that students receive the services that they are entitled to.
Absolutely. And we like to provide consistency, right? So this specific SLPA has worked for us this entire school year. And so, and wants to be here in Auburn, which is great. And so that provides consistency for our students. It's really hard when we get a contractor for 1 year and then they're gone and we get another contractor. It doesn't provide that consistency for our students in receiving those services. We like to have that consistency.
Okay. Well, and given all that information, I move that we approve item J2.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. And thank you, Trustee Ross.
Thank you. I pulled J4 because I'm curious. I was trying to find a little more research on this, but this is from our Placer County letter, correct? the auditing, or is this on behalf of Auburn Union School District?
Oh, I am.
I didn't want to just steal it. No, this isn't directly tied to PCOE. So this is us independently. So as we talked about before that that our prior auditor, we would no longer be in contract with them. So this was our request for qualifications and proposals that you guys had approved for finding a new auditing firm. So
Okay.
this is the ratification of the agreement with a new auditing firm.
And this has nothing to do with the FitMat?
No,
Okay, okay. That
it
was-
would if we didn't have an auditor. That might be a concern, but if we have one,
Gotcha.
we're good.
And this auditor is here just to make sure everybody's qualified, credentials are all there, money's, like, this is auditing for everything in our
No,
district,
these are just our fiscal auditors.
fiscal.
Yes.
So
So
they're
this is
checking the
the
books.
independent audits that you would normally see. Usually we have a couple of them a year, and then we have an ultimate end of year audit report that the board receives annually.
This is that.
Yeah,
Okay.
this
I
is
was trying to make sense of it. Just speaking with different CFOs and kind of telling them what was going on with ours, they were just wondering how kind of we made simple mistakes on some of our math stuff. And so I was trying to figure out where and how this all fit in. Thank you for your clarification. And
Would you mind clarifying? I didn't pull what we used to pay Crow. How comparable is it? Was Crow about 29,000 or something like that per year?
I know when I had pulled it up previously, because there was discussion about the cost of, the contracts that Crows are engaging in right now. And we were under the $40,000 mark, but the last fiscal year, we paid approximately $35,000 to Crow.
Okay.
But I think that was in combination with some extended hours, because there was an audit extension last year
Okay.
as well. So I think that kind of partnered with it. So I think they're comparable.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I think that they were about the same cost, although, one is a smaller firm versus like a kind of big, almost like they're not a big four, but they're big five or something.
And I think
National.
really, honestly, with auditors, it's kind of the same thing with, like maybe an architect or any other professional service. It really depends on the size of the district and how much they charge based on that. So I think that's probably why they're about the same.
with that, I move to approve item J4.
I second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, moving to agenda item 11A, consideration of the closing of Alta Vista Community Charter due to low enrollment.
Okay, Alta Vista Charter is experiencing low enrollment. Continuing to operate the charter school with this reduced enrollment may not be fiscally sound. PCOE provides oversight to county districts and provides them with guidance. And a recent letter of going concern outlined fiscal viability as one of the ongoing items that we have to evaluate. AUSD believes operating the charter without significant enrollment increases would result in a negative fund balance within the subsequent 2 fiscal years. So I'm going to show you some data right now based on the survey request that we had from the last meeting. And I just want to say that we have gathered survey data and community input throughout this process we've been going through. So I just want to point that out. Thanks, Dave. Thank you. So the school preference survey went out, and from that survey, there were 475 respondents in total. And I put the breakdown of the respondents and how they answered the questions on 2 slides. So when we toggle to the next slide, you will have that same information on both, just for reference. So in the survey we sent, the first question we asked whether or not families had a child in one of our schools. And so again, that's that left column data there. The second question asked respondents to rank their school of choice from the complete list of options that we already provide, or some that the board had discussed were possibilities. So you can take a second here to look at this slide and see what our respondents selected for choice 1. Okay, and then next slide, Dave. Thank you. And then for the second slide shows you the second choice. And so whereas Auburn was the first choice on the last previous slide, Skyridge was the second choice, as you can see on this slide. And you can take a second to look because there are other options as well. Thank you. Okay, currently there are 83 students enrolled at Alta Vista. So the breakdown is here and it's side by side again with another data set, but that breakdown is by grade level. And so you'll see there that we do have some TK enrollment and we would want to keep our TK enrollment. In fact, we under the new UPK, coming down and all that, we are honoring our TK students because we're building our TK program out at all of our schools. So that is the first bullet point there. And then after that, you will see the next 3 bullet points are what we would have to call combo classes. So we're looking at TK1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. And that's 22 students in each of those classes. So that's the breakdown. Now, we did have 10 students enroll in 6th grade, but we would not be able to continue to offer 6th grade with only 10 students. So it's a little bit different than TK, where we are providing TK at all schools. 6th grade would be something that we wish to offer. And so therefore, with only 10 students, we would not be able to. So that leaves us a total of 73 students at Alta Vista.
Superintendent designee, would you prefer that we hold questions to the end?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, because I probably, if I don't have the answer, we'll all kind of pitch in depending on the question that you have. Perfect. Thank you. And then the cost of the non-classroom based program. And again, the print is small. They're side by side. I wanted to make this compact for you, but I know that you all have it on your laptops as well. So if we're really looking at 20% of our in-seat enrollment would be based on the 73 students, and that would be 14 students. And then we would have, the ADA per student is about 11.9, which would net us about 167. And then you subtract the non-classroom based funds at 3,500 per student, leaves us 49,000 approximately. And then the ADA funding that would be remaining to our charter would be about 117. The school pathways program would cost about $10,000, and then the teacher of record would be approximately 98,000. That's an approximation depending on, where they come in on the salary scale. But that would be approximate with benefits. And so then we're looking at the ending revenue to the LEA would be about $9,000. And then the next slide shows the Blue Door survey results that the board asked for at the last board meeting. And you will see that about 50% of the respondents to the Blue Door survey said that they would switch to the Alta Vista charter if there was one available. And that's about 70 to 100 students. Now, I do want to once again caution you, we talked about this before, survey data is survey data, right? So people respond to surveys, but then, we really need them to show up and have that enrollment piece so that we know for sure that they're coming. And so this already, but I just feel the need to say that to you as well. So, and then administration recommends that the Auburn Union School District Board of Education upholds its fiduciary responsibility to the district budget by closing Alta Vista Community Charter.
Questions? How many have applied for Alta Vista since last meeting?
I spoke with Principal Wilson today. I believe we have the same number of applicants, but I will let her speak.
Oh, 83.
Go back to the slides. I think that there was a summary of.
Trustee Dowd, are you asking how many additionally?
Yeah,
Between
thank you.
since our last meeting until this meeting?
And including that 83, is that number different? Has it been added to, have you seen a good, oh my gosh, this is almost good reaction?
There you go.
Since last meeting, we've had about 10 to 11 more students enroll since our last board meeting.
So what's our total right now, Diana?
What was that?
What's our total right now?
Our total right now is still 83.
So it's what's on the slide.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Yeah, I've had input from a lot of our families that they're waiting to see what's going to happen, where we're going to be located and such before they make a final decision. I haven't received everyone's input from their intent to return. And as I've stated before, I don't want them to return it and tell us they're coming if they're really still undecided.
Thank you.
How many 6th graders would be needed to keep that class?
So our current ratio would be 32-1. Well, currently I think it's 31 for sixth grade, but 32-1 is next year. So since we're looking at next year, 32-1 is our staffing ratio. We would want to get as close to that as we could to fund that teacher.
I want to, Director Peters, would it be possible to look at that slide again that has the potential enrollment? It has the breakdown by grade level. You know, we've been talking a lot about parents probably don't want combo classes. Parents probably don't want a relatively small size school. And I've said that myself. And then I was looking at some of the options that are available in our community, and I was really struck by the option of Harvest Ridge Charter School. So I just wanted to, if you could go back a few slides, or it's maybe just one slide to the where there's a breakdown there. Thank you. So I want to just use Harvest Ridge as an example, because that's a program that's really successful. And if you are trying to get your kids into that school, you are unlikely to have a spot. So the way that they're operating their program to be solvent is that their TK program right now, we're obligated as an LEA to offer TK. It's strictly a homeschool program so that those students can be served as part of that program. They have a kindergarten class of 13 students, and then they have combo classes. They have a 1-2 combo, and each class is about 13 students per grade level, so a total of 26. So they have a standalone K, and then a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I wanted to offer that as that's a model that is in our community that seems to be working really well. So I wouldn't want to be eliminating these 10 sixth graders. I feel like there might be a way to accommodate them. And it just made me rethink my negativity towards the idea of a combo class, that some people want a small environment that the Harvest Ridge parents don't seem to be terribly opposed to the combo. So I just wanted to call that out on that slide.
That does almost make more sense to keep the kindergartners a little bit more separate, since it is more.
I guess just being either introduction to school and giving them more kind of not one-on-one attention, but could we go back to the slides that talk about the survey results?
If I could too,
please.
just on that, with
Yeah.
Harvest Ridge, are those teachers union? Do you know? And do you know what their comparative?
They're
pay
not,
is?
there's, again, we have some folks in the audience who can help answer that, because I don't know the answer.
Thank you. And next time that we direct a question, would you mind just please stepping to the microphone so that our folks at home can hear it too? Thank you. No, thank you.
So they have a total enrollment of about 117. 110, okay. Just to give you an idea of one model that might be comparable to what Alta Vista could be, given some of the numbers that we're seeing at this moment. I think it's been really hard for families to respond because it's been a moving target. And I think that Alta Vista has been a really kind of tricky decision for us to, there's been so much work done as part of the fiscal recovery implementation plan. But the issues surrounding a charter are so detailed. And I think that I'm hearing from some of the community members in our school that they would just want to have a little bit more input as to where the school landed. I think they were a little bit caught off guard by our vote to go to E.V. Kane, and but there are still families that want to stick with the charter.
Are there any more questions?
So I know Sarah had requested to go to the school preference, our survey that we put out. And I was at one of the schools where it was really hard to understand the survey. And I think that these may not be as accurate as they could be, given the situation and the circumstance. I also think a lot of families are still maybe a little hopeful that some change may happen and therefore are not really looking at the survey, but given the choice of bringing, the Alta Vista over to Rock Creek, it was hurtful to some, but to others, they were like, this may be a great opportunity to start something like a dual immersion program. And I do believe before shutting down our school completely, we look into programs such as something like that, because you do only start with a kindergarten class and work your way up. So it's not like you're prepping for a whole school. You can start your preparations a little different. And I don't know if that makes us valuable, but I know that makes us wanted because it's a program that people want and are requesting at the schools. So back to the survey idea, I know it was very, very complicated for some to understand. And I do believe that you would have a lot more enrollment. You've given, maybe if you could step over to Rock Creek again, or, you know, again, before closing, there are some really interested parents.
Okay, are there any other
Well,
questions?
Absolutely. So I had asked that we just go back to the survey results quickly, a couple, the first choice slide would be fine. So I just wanted to point out that the way that the survey was designed, it asked both a location for a school and also what type of school program you might be interested in. So it took all of those who said that Alta Vista was their first choice and it dispersed them into all these categories. So one way to look at this is to see that about 150 people preferred Auburn Elementary. That was their first choice. A similar number chose Sky Ridge. And there's various ways to interpret this, but one way is that if you counted all of those who selected Alta Vista, whether it was a hybrid program, they didn't tell us where the hybrid program was, what their preference was, but you get that there were approximately 140 people who responded saying that an Alta Vista program was their first choice. And some of those may not remain with the program if it were to go to one site or another. That's what's hard to take from this data. I just wanted to make the comment that if you were to add if you were to look at the Alta Vista interest in aggregate, it's very comparable to the other schools. So I think that one key point that needs to be made is that the Alta Vista charter has recently undergone a material revision, an extension on the date. So it's currently authorized until June 30th of 2027. And that we can't just close a charter school. Closing a charter school means that you're revoking the charter. And in order to revoke a charter school, the Ed Code cites a number of conditions under which you could revoke a charter, and they are all violations. Fiscal mismanagement is one of them. There's a number of different violations that could prompt a district to consider closing or revoking a charter. But even if there were a finding or a violation on the part of Alta Vista, which I haven't seen, there would be an appeals process and a due process that needs to be followed. If there were a violation identified, the school would have the opportunity to have independent legal counsel. They would have the opportunity to respond. There's a back and forth kind of process. So I don't see how, I haven't seen that due process followed. I haven't seen any of the violations that would prompt a revocation of the charter identified.
So I'm wondering if maybe we're out of question phase and maybe into the next phase of this?
Well, no,
or-
I guess I'm
or it's
asking.
the
it
question for
says
me. I just want to make sure I'm
administration-
answering. the
It says
question.
administration recommends, and I'm just wondering who in administration recommends this and what is the mechanism? Because there's no, we can't just close the charter. So that's, we're being recommended to close the charter, but for Ed Code, that's not an option
So-
without a process. And
Thank you. So we actually met with Bill Schutz and actually he came here and made a statement, and I actually have
he
that.
represented the district in that case, correct? Bill Schutz is
He's the charter,
the district,
the legal counsel for the regarding charter.
but he's representing the
Clerk,
district.
if you could please not interrupt the superintendent designate. let's have some decorum and let her answer the question that was asked.
It's an important question to understand. Charters are a separate LEA. They're entitled to legal representation. And so I was just trying to
But
clarify.
we are we are the authorizer and they are a dependent charter. So we did seek legal counsel from Bill Schutz and he's been here to speak with you and answer your questions in the past. And so because he's been with us all this time and he is the charter, our charter legal counsel.
I'm so sorry. This is actually, there's an important distinction here, though. Bill Schutz represents AUSD in charter matters, but I'm asking who represents the charter LEA in legal matters. They are entitled to their own legal representation. So I'm just trying to clarify, when you say you spoke to Bill Schutz, he was representing AUSD.
But yeah. Yeah, so he would because we're their oversight. So they're dependent, they're not independent.
Regardless, I can try to, since we have someone in the audience who may be able to answer this question.
Can I just stop?
So
Because we never did
President
public
Holden.
comment. We skipped public comment
Yeah,
on
but
this.
that's what I'm saying. I'm here answering questions about this presentation, but if we're moving to discussion, I think we need to go back and.
And thank you, Trustee
Yeah.
Ross.
Yeah.
So we did that was a big oversight on our part. And so if there is public comment relating to this agenda item, if we could please hear that now.
And I apologize for cutting you off.
No,
I just wanted to
that's-
make sure we were in line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. I've been a teacher at Alta Vista Community Charter for 10 years. That's a third of my teaching career. During that time, I've been through 4 principals, 2 SAWs, 5 health clerks, 5 special education teachers, and 16 teachers at our site. One thing that has been consistent are parents that want their children enrolled at Alta Vista. This is a special community that specifically opened this charter and school and has continued support for the past 10 years. Some facts that constantly are being overshadowed. In the past 5 years, Alta Vista has contributed to AUSD for SPED and indirect cost of $1,317,273. AUSD contributions to Alta Vista over the past 5 years is $545,030. The less contributions are $489,742. When you look at the board policy and ed code, it says that the board may revoke a charter with violations, meaning health and safety of students, material revision conditions and standards, failed to meet student outcomes identified in the charter, failed to meet generally accepted accounting principles, or engaging in fiscal mismanagement or violation of the law. There is actually a process and procedures that the board needs to have in place. They need to notify the charter with these violations. There needs to be a period of time where the board has concluded a reasonable period of time for the charter to remedy or refute these violations. In identifying this period, the board shall consider the amount of time reasonably necessary to remedy each identified violation, which may include the charter school's estimation and our anticipated remedy time. Under these specific information guidelines that I've just stated from your board policy and ed code, I don't feel Alta Vista charter should be closing or the charter should be revoked because AUSD board did not follow procedures and ed code regarding the revocation of Alta Vista Community Charter School. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional public comment? All right, thank you. Thank you. Yes, please. Thank you.
I'm Kathleen Doherty. Good evening, Superintendent Garcia and esteemed board members. My name is Kathleen Darty, and I am the prior superintendent of Newcastle Elementary School District for 15 years. I've had the pleasure of opening, closing, and providing oversight to charters. And right now, my job is to work with charters up and down the state of California and work with districts up and down the state of California, helping bring charters back into the living from getting those notice of violations and working with the districts to understand what their needs are as far as the charter schools go. I am not an expert by any means, but I'm passionate about the rights of parents to make a choice for their children. And I'm passionate about the right of districts to support those choices and to support the growth of those students. And one of the things that is very clear about the charter world is that you don't get to close a charter unless it's in the best interest of the students. And so the program is in violation. It's not in the best interest of the students. Students are being harmed. As a dependent charter, which Alta Vista clearly is a dependent charter, your board becomes the oversight board. So you control their fiscal side. So if their fiscal side is not doing well, then it's up to you and the leadership of that charter school to make the changes to help it do well, because it has no control. You control all the marbles, so to speak, in a game of marbles. And it's really important for you to understand that. Ed Code is also very clear about the fact that a charter cannot be closed because it costs the district money. That is not one of the things you can close it for. And I can't cite the Ed Code number right now, but I can give it to you because I've done a lot of research on that. And I've worked again with districts looking at that. One of the things that I do is I help charters regain their confidence and provide the programs that they were intended to provide. So board member, I don't know what your name is, but loved the idea that you promoted about a dual immersion. There are no dual immersions in Placer County. And dual immersions, parents would flock to it, and that would bring your enrollment up. The other thing you need to understand is that charter schools need to be staffed according to their enrollment, just like you staff your elementaries and you staff your middle schools. And I know your May 15th notice is coming up, and you have that very, very difficult decision to give those releases out if you have to. I'm hoping that you don't. But closing schools, any schools, means that you are rearranging your people and catering to the strengths of your people. But it also means that you're taking a look at programs that you're offering. And you have the ability with one fell swoop to take this little charter school and make it very popular, because you're going to create specialized programs. I heard about Evie Kane and the makers at Evie Kane and the musicians that you have. I'm working with a set of schools down in Southern California right now that just grew their middle school from 50 kids to 400 in a year because they created an arts program and a studio for kids. How simple is that? And it started in their band room with loaned instruments. It doesn't take a lot of money. It takes creativity and thought. And it takes people coming to the table to put it out there to say, what do our parents want? What are they asking for? How can we do it? And that's why it's important that you follow policy and procedure with charter schools. Ed Code is clear whether it's dependent or independent. And I would hate to see you as a board make a decision that's going to cause grief to you as the board, because you have extended that time period when parents have to make their decision because of the days involved before you can close. You've already made some very difficult decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw the survey go out and I think I understand now why it went out in the first place. I'm really interested to see what the numbers are for these options. I totally agree that a dual immersion would definitely bring people. So depending on where you put that, I'd love to see the numbers to see before, especially before a decision is made. Where does it make sense? And is it viable long-term for the district? For sure. Does the building support, all the numbers we've seen so far have been so kind of confusing on what the options are and what school remains open, what doesn't, this is what, and then they switch so often. So if they're, I mean, a dual immersion, 100% know it would bring people not only from Auburn, but it wouldn't cannibalize our own school district. It would bring people up from Roseville. It would bring people from Rockland. It's very popular in the Bay Area where I'm from, and they are always have wait lists for their schools. So dual immersion or an IB, those type of schools, I totally agree with, but just making sure that we have the financial resources to do that. We're talking about creating a whole nother thing. Do we have the financial resources to do it? Something has to give here at some point. And before we jump in and make a decision, you know, for the public to really be able to see, okay, this is what our decision means. What programs are we going to have to cut? If we don't close this school, we can't do this IB program either. If we do close this school, then everybody loses out. You know, we need some really clear cut numbers. I'm on the LCAP. I was like, I can't even go. I don't even know if there's an LCAP. This LCAP makes sense anymore because this came up. It's like, is Rock Creek open? Is Rock Creek closed? Is Auburn Elm closed? Is EV King closed? Oh, we're going K through 8. I feel like a decision was made and then now we're back to no decision. And that's where I think you guys saw the frustration with parents. It's like, none of us really know what's going on anymore. So if there's some solid numbers and maybe have another special board meeting or whatever with what those choices are, projections to show us what a dual immersion school would bring, would help the community make really informed decisions rather than emotional ones. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your patience, everybody, to circle back to that. Was there any additional public comment on that agenda item? Okay. So to step back to where we were then, I think we were still asking questions and kind of moving into the discussion phase.
Right. So you were superintendent designee, you were describing kind of how this recommendation was made, and you were describing a meeting with Bill Schutz.
Yes, and what Bill told us is that the governing board makes the decision on whether to close a school. And so if you look at our enrollment, and closing a school due to low enrollment is a reason, right? And so if you look at our enrollment and the conversations we've had in the past, our enrollment is low. We would have 3 combination classes and a very small TK at this point, the way the charter is functioning. So that's information I'm bringing to you today for your discussion.
And I know that we asked this question last time, but I'm curious with the results from Blue Door and the opportunity to bring homeschool ADA to our district. How many students do we need to be soluble? I know we've asked this. I don't remember hearing an exact answer.
So currently we have 83 students enrolled, 73 that we know we can put in classrooms, because that 6th grade classroom with 10 students, we know we can't do at this point. And so if you look at that, we have 14 students that we could allow to, or right, Blue Door, it's 14, it's a 20% at Blue Door. She's the Blue Door expert. I'm going to let her make sure that I'm getting this fact right, because I have that we would have 14 students. Verify that, please.
So again, the condition with Blue Door is not if we have students and they're enrolled with Blue Door, we can just take those in.
Right.
We have our current limitations that we know that we are safe in guaranteeing that we'd receive funds for if they were non-classroom based or homeschool students. And we're allowed up to 20% of our seat-based. So that would equal 14 students currently. We won't have a determination and if we could exceed that until sometime in May. I think we're looking at middle to end of May.
May
at this point.
17th is the
May
State Board of
17th,
Education.
you know, is supposed to be the date. Then we could know if we could exceed it. And then I think as Superintendent Designee Luchi Garcia had mentioned in her presentation, and you had said, you know, it's hard to tell how many would come over. So we know that we could definitely take 14. If at some point you find out we could take more, like I said before, it's not like all of a sudden, you know, it's highly unlikely we would have 70 students just out of nowhere pop in and say, you know, we're ready to go. And just as a as a side note with that, so everybody's aware, we do know that they shift enrollment and I know that Diana, Principal Wilson has talked about that before. People have said that they will attend and then we don't see them materialize as this last school year happened. Charter schools already have processed all their enrollments. And for Blue Door, for example, the registrations for current families is happening as of April 24th. So they're going to be registering at Blue Door with their current charter funds that they're enrolled with as of April 24th. So if we see some come, it may be in the middle of the year, or it may not even be till next year, or how they trickle in, I don't know. We just know that there's a possibility of 70 to 100 that said they may be interested in coming over as a non-classroom based.
And so my question, going back to my question is, how many students do we need at Alta Vista to be soluble?
I believe that Principal Wilson did the calculations and said 203 students to be.
203 students to be soluble
Yes.
and seated.
Correct.
Yeah, last year I just did a rough calculation to see, how we could reduce or get rid of the contribution that AUSD is making to the charter. And that rough number was 204. That was the enrollment plan I presented at cabinet last year. And it was also based on our current school site of what we could fit on our current school site at our current location.
I wanted to make the comment that it seems like we're disregarding those who were interested in sixth grade. And this is the second year in a row that we've offered sixth grade and then perhaps rescinded it, and how rough that is on families. I don't see why there isn't a way that we could like adopt a model similar to Harvest Ridge where we could have a 5-6 combo. I heard Principal Wilson say that it's not a class she would want to teach because of how the standards align, but I see it being done elsewhere. And so I just don't want us to be limiting ourselves and eliminating students when there are folks who want this. So let's not put additional limitations, I guess, on if there are 83, let's not say that it's 73.
So at this point, the reason why I'm saying that is because we're contributing. They have a low enrollment, and to have 10 students in a sixth grade classroom from this fiscal perspective that I'm coming to you with today, that's not something that we would typically do, right? So that's why I'm saying that we would not have the sixth grade classroom. I understand what you're saying. As a parent, if sixth grade is offered and then now we can't do it, that's difficult. I completely understand that, but I'm bringing that to you today with the fiscal component in mind.
I'm just saying there's another way to offer it where it's not my intention to pay a teacher to teach 10 students in one class. I know that that's not the most economical way to do this. I wanted to go back to the non-classroom based funding, because we were talking about how currently we're subject to a 20% cap. We're going to find out in about a month whether or not we can exceed that. From this, we've made that funding determination request. I wanted to ask if Kathy Doherty would speak to, I guess there are other ways to assure that you could change the charter, for example, to become a primarily non-classroom based charter, and that would allow you to bring in more students. Really, the point that I'm trying to make is that there are ways for us to, as Vice President Wedge has indicated, he really has an interest in having an enrollment committee and figuring out how do we welcome families back into our district? How do we offer more choices for how to receive an education, whether it's hybrid, homeschool, et cetera. And I think that there's an opportunity to grow the non-classroom based program. I don't think that we're strictly going to be limited to the 14 students that are included in this analysis here. Can you please speak to the other options for accommodating more non-classroom based students than the 20% cap?
So if you want someone to speak, I'll leave it to President Holt too.
So if we're moving on to the discussion, we're kind of past the presentation part, we can certainly bring it back up. But if we're,
Well, I just wanted to get clarified from Ms.
Doherty.
Thank you. No. Diana. Our principal, our beloved principal. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. It's been a day. That 203 students, that was per Alta Vista as it is set up right now, currently, correct?
Yes.
But if we were to move it somewhere else, or if we were to loosen up on teachers or figure something out, we wouldn't need 203 because we don't have the same facility and facility needs, correct?
You mean if we were placed at a shared facility?
Or somewhere else? Yeah.
A shared facility that would be different just because I was calculating on for our own school site. So I guess that's a tricky question. I don't know which school site we're talking about. If we're sharing staff, because we're going to occupy with Skyridge, then I believe our net savings not as close to $200,000 because we're sharing school staff versus if we were placed at Rock Creek, where we'll be in the same situation as we are now, and we would be dependent on increasing that enrollment for sure.
Is it possible that the 200+ student figure is slightly elevated above what would actually bring solvency for the charter? Because I mean, for example, the charter was solvent it was just about 3 years ago that it was solvent, and it didn't have 204 students. It had 160 perhaps.
I don't know that answer. I know when I calculate costs, I always overestimate the cost. So it may be that, I overinflated numbers because I always want to err on the side of overestimation than underestimation when it comes to money.
Yeah.
But I don't have that data. I think CBO Leslie would need to answer that question.
I think there's been a desire to is there a certain enrollment number that needs to be met? Because we all know that the charter needs to be solvent, and the district doesn't have the resources to continue to contribute to the charter, but it's been hard to get a number that, like, if we had a target, if you had 110 students, for example, then that would mean that the charter could be solvent.
And I think that's really hard because again, it's a variable target. So if you have teachers come in, you have teachers that go up. I mean, that's your moving target of costs or increase of cost. So, and when you receive, roughly a little bit less than $12,000 per student, a $12,000 swing means you need another kid. If you recall from prior presentations, as we looked at the co-location of Alta Vista Community Charter School on any campus, really, we were utilizing their current year enrollment of 110 students. So we were looking at if we had 110 students, all 110, or we kept 110, and they moved over. And then we looked at just by using no growth, just a regular cohort survival as it currently sits, they would have a slight uptick in enrollment for the two subsequent. So in looking at that in that prior, configured 3-year outlook, so the multi-year projection that I had done, looking as if they had the cost savings and that they were to go forward. And I think that was in both the first interim and the second interim budget. So we were looking at 110 students and then a slight uptick. So I would say just for this fiscal year alone, with prior costs. And so that was not including any increase in teacher salaries, or if we have any increase in benefits that maybe we may not be aware of, or if we have any additional staff that has to be hired. That was just based on 110 and then possibly more in the prior out 2 years. So, or the subsequent out 2 years. So I would say we would need to be looking at a minimum of 110 students at a co-located site.
And that could be a combination of in-seat students and non-classroom based.
Well, I mean, it depends on the amount of non-classroom based. You can see that if we get 100, if we have 14 as our 20%, which is the current legislative maximum, even if you were to revise or start a new charter, that's why they made that new 20% cap. If you're 14 students and we go to non-classroom based with that model, from Superintendent Designee Lucy Garcia's chart, you're looking at netting about $9,000 overall, because we would need to have an individual teacher of record at that point. So if we have our non-classroom base at 14, it's not really a combination. It'd be 110 in seat. 14 students are basically paying for themselves. And then should we at some time be able to grow the non-classroom based, that's where it just depends on how many students come in.
Now, clerk, could you cite again specifically where in the ed code it outlines reasons for closure?
Yeah. So.
And Director Peters, if possible, could you put this on the screen when we identify it? Thank you.
Okay.
So or govt.westlaw.com has California regulations. And that's linked.
The slide deck or like the website?
The actual website.
So the ed code regarding revoking a charter is 47607. I'll start reading it while you're looking. A charter may be revoked by the authority that granted the charter under this chapter if the authority finds through a showing of substantial evidence that the charter school did any of the following. A, committed a material violation of any of the conditions, standards, or procedures set forth in the charter. B, failed to meet or pursue any of the pupil outcomes identified in the charter. C, failed to meet generally accepted accounting principles or engage in fiscal mismanagement. D, violated any provision of law. And then it goes on to say that, let's see, there's so many, there's a lot to it, but basically, before revocation, the authority that granted the charter shall notify the charter school of any violation of this section and give the school a reasonable opportunity to remedy the violation unless the authority determines in writing that the violation constitutes a severe and imminent threat to the health or safety of the pupils. I mean, there's a lot more here.
And
Should I
that's-
need to keep,
Yes, so you're on the right track. And then I think we want to look at,
you asked for the specific ed code, which is 47607. 47607. It starts with section C. I think it's down farther, actually. So this is talking more about establishing a charter.
It's 607. Yeah.
It's down near the bottom of the screen.
That's right.
I'd just like to take a point of privilege and use the little ladies' room while we look this up, if that's okay.
I see. I think denying renewal. Oh, are we in the right place?
I'm just gonna, I think it's pretty deep in there. Let me see if I can Google it and find it. Right, that's right. Looks like F is where it starts. This is the section I was reading.
well, seeing as we've had one trustee have to use the restroom, let's take a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
It's currently 7:37. Let's round up to 7:38. We'll be back in at 7:48.
Yeah, I use the restroom as a piece.
Thank you for the reminder for the microphones. All right, it's 7:48 and we are back from our recess. And we are bringing up the ed code. Let's see, so those are reasons why a charter may be revoked, right? If the charter authority finds for showing substantial evidence. And Director Peters, could you go back to that first page that we linked to from this, the cde.ca.gov charter school closures page? So under general information where it says a charter school may close voluntarily. And we are the LEA for Alta Vista Community Charter School, correct? Superintendent designate.
The board is the governing board of the charter. Yes, they are their own LEA, but they are a dependent charter governed by the board.
Thank you for that clarification. So as I read this, then it looks like the charter school may be closed voluntarily by this governing board.
That's not my understanding of how it works. Would it be possible for us to get
And just
a legal opinion on that?
so we did, and that was the legal opinion as well, that we can voluntarily, so it's closing the charter. It's not revoking, but it's closing the charter. Based on the language that President Holt stated, that's what our legal counsel said as well.
So I haven't seen any of the language from the legal counsel. Is it possible to share? I'm not sure when this meeting occurred with legal counsel. I'm just now hearing of it in the course of this agenda item. It would be really helpful if, my understanding is that anytime one trustee receives information, we should all be receiving the same information.
And you absolutely are. So legal counsel has been here to answer questions. And what I did was I went back through emails and I grabbed a memo that he had sent to the board in the past. And that was when I was not the superintendent designee at the time. So I believe I forwarded that to the board, or maybe I didn't re-forward it to you, but you all have it because I saw board on it and it was
So
sent by
back in
Amber.
January, we have some moratorium clarification. We were working through the non-classroom based program and what the options were and going to the state board. So that's what I have from our legal representative. I don't believe I have the language.
So I can get that for you. I did speak with him just to confirm, because back then I was in a different role, a different title, right? And so my lens was different. And so to come here today and present information to you, I needed to fully understand what his memo meant and in the right context. So I can absolutely have him send you another memo or an explanation of basically whatever you need. You tell me what the board needs. He said he's available to write up a memo, or he can even come down at some point if needed, but that's going to won't be to the next board meeting.
So if I may, so last month, this was on the agenda and there was a lot of heavy discussion on this. And we decided as a board to move this forward and let's do this survey that we sent out. Well, the survey got sent out and it's not as hopeful as we all probably, some of us expected it to be. So now we have this issue we're bringing up. So my concern is what's going to be brought up next month. I mean, this has been a history of this district. It's been really hard to make a decision. We are in a financial, fiscal, responsible right now. And the past years, the district has not been making, the proper changes that needed to be made. And this is where we're at today. And this is the same rhetoric. We keep pushing this can down the road. We keep pushing this can down the road. I understand the charter is important. I understand, parents want to keep the charter. I understand there's great programs that might work, at the dual immersion program. I have heard of that before. I don't know too much about it. I've heard great things about it, but I mean, that's not up for discussion right now. The discussion is to get this district back on track, because right now we have the Office of Education, PCOE, and avoid going to any kind of receivership, then we can move forward, past that. And so my question is, I mean, how much longer do we want to keep on kicking this can down the road?
Well,
Well,
and I'm sorry. I just want to say that I do think that it's a responsibility for us to look at the future, because if we have an option to bring in more students through like a dual immersion program, then it needs to be discussed now. Because if we do close Alta Vista, there's a chance that we close it forever. And if we keep it up and try different programs, then that's a different thing. And I guess I would end with my question would be, we do have a responsibility to be fiscal, but we also have a responsibility to our parents to provide them the best education, the best programs, and the best opportunities for their
But if
children.
the district is not fiscal, are we going to be providing the best education? Because right now I see, we're trying to put a gamble out there, of these different programs that might work, that might bring in more students. I mean,
Right.
it all seems a gamble right now.
But we also heard from Sarah Liebert that we have more money coming in through special ed than we are actually giving out. So we haven't even considered what does that look like if Alta Vista is not there giving to Auburn Union School District? What is that? Because there's a financial impact there as well. What does that look like? So if Alta Vista is not contributing to our special ed fund, are we losing out there? And that's my question for Heather.
So it's not that they're contributing to the special ed fund. They're paying portions based on special education services, and Director Hughes, you can correct me on this one if I go. So any special education services that the students of Alta Vista require, they're paying for essentially the services that they're receiving from special education. So it's based upon their student needs of the enrollment at that time. So should there, of course, not be any need for any special education services there wouldn't be any cost to Alta Vista Charter for special education services. So should the charter not be there anymore, A, there would be not the need for that enrollment, or, B, they would either be at a different place that they would require those special education services, or if the enrollment were to come back to the district, then that would be something that we would then be receiving the full ADA or the money for grant money per student. And then that would be, of course, then our responsibility as them being our student of Auburn Union School District to provide those services.
I mean, I hear you use the term gambling, but I think that what is known is that if we close Alta Vista, we have, right now there are about 100 students there. And those families are, some will stay within our district, but most will leave. The families that I talk to are looking at all the neighboring charter schools and are trying to get in. We lose the opportunity to try to offer more parent choice through a homeschool program, through offering things like a hybrid program. We're shutting down these different program possibilities that are best offered through a charter program. I know you're really interested in trying to increase enrollment, and by closing the charter, you're automatically disenfranchising those, 80 to 100 parents that are currently part of our district because their students are enrolled in the charter, and you're, depriving the district of the opportunity to bring some students back into a homeschool program, such as through, those families that left our district during COVID to take classes at Blue Door and found a homeschool program to enroll their kids in, because we don't offer that. So if that's part of what we have to lose. I think that the way I was hoping to approach this is that it's just really problem solving on the part of the board. We know the charter has to be solvent. My read of the ed code is that we can't just shut the charter down. So how do we try to repurpose, rethink how the charter can be an asset to our district, such as like offering an innovative program? There's so many other problems that we're facing right now. One of them is that some families don't have transportation to school. They really are looking for an option that they can walk to, such as if the charter were to move to Rock Creek. We're facing the fact that Auburn Elementary, my understanding is that it's going to be very full, like at full capacity. Is there a way for us to alleviate some of that pressure on that site that is going to be, the max site capacity was somewhere around 624 if you don't count the upper grade level grade span or the increased class sizes for upper grade levels. So how do we approach these different issues that we're facing as a district and try to come up with a solution that solve some of those problems.
Well, I think we need to start and we need to get our house in order. It's clear that it's not in order right now financially. That's where we need to be.
Alta Vista has been out of, I mean, the amount that the district is spending to keep Alta Vista solvent has ranged from like 94,000 a few years ago. It's projected at 255 this year. I don't know if that's changed at all. But you're saying that the house needs to be in order. It's our special education costs that are now $4 million a year. I mean, we have to think about proportionality here. Is it worth it to save the district contribution of Alta Vista of about $100,000, $200,000, yet lose many families to local charter schools and lose the opportunity to grow into some other type of program modality like a homeschool or hybrid program?
And all these things you bring up are great points, but these things should have been discussed and talked about years ago. And here we are now. We're up here. Now we got to make a decision.
We made a decision 2 months ago. We made a decision 2 months ago, and we are backtracking yet again. We are back on that conversation of if we close it. What if we change that conversation to this is going to have a home? Why can't we make that decision tonight? It is going to have a home. We are going to give those kids a classroom to be in, and let's let them sign up for it.
So Clerk Brickler, you've kind of thrown a whole lot of different points out when you've been speaking. So it's kind of hard to address everything all at once. But what we discussed last month, excuse me, there's a whole lot of things that came up, and something you just brought up too is home study, which Principal Wilson explained has been discontinued because of lack of interest. The hybrid programs, Principal Wilson discussed that when she was going and providing these options at the school, at other schools, there wasn't much interest. Then we see the survey results that we put the survey out there. If people had confusion with the survey, there were plenty of resources to be able to ask for help clarifying the survey. I'm sure they could have asked the district. So there are ways that people can work to understand the survey. So I think the district has done a great service trying to promote Alta Vista Community Charter School. Principal Wilson has done a tremendous service trying to promote and recruit students to the charter school. But then we also have to go back and look. Alta Vista Community Charter School, most of the students live in the vicinity of Alta Vista. That's what was briefed. I don't remember if it was November or December, but when you gave a report on Alta Vista, it's their neighborhood school. So you previously, Clerk Brickler, had brought up concerns that if the charter moved to Skyridge, that the students would just be kind of absorbed by Skyridge and parents would just ultimately go to Skyridge for that. I don't think that our charter school has been successful. It has not successfully competed with charters in the area. It has provided great services for a lot of students, but ultimately it hasn't been as competitive as surrounding charters, whether it's Harvest Ridge or Bowman or down in Rockland, John Adams Academy. I know they had a wait list over 3,000 students. I think it was last year. So there are some things that our charter just wasn't competing with. And I think it's okay that we accept that and that we focus on what we can do, which is provide the traditional kind of brick and mortar public schools to our students. I think that's a totally reasonable thing for us to try to do as a board. We tried to offer an alternative, the board did, when they opened Alta Vista as a charter, and it looks like it has not been successful.
I don't think we doubt the service provided. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge the service provided through Alta Vista has been incredible. But I'm not sure if that was of the fault of the charter or the fault of the leadership. And there's been so much leadership turnaround that I don't believe our charter has even been given an option to succeed. So I'm not sure that our Alta Vista parents should have to suffer because our leadership was not put together.
I think it's been really hard for the charter to compete. It's been said publicly that the charter was closing for the last 2 years, then it was moving. I mean, I just want to remind you that we just put out a piece in the Auburn Journal. I think it was published in the last couple of weeks saying Alta Vista is not closing, it's moving. There's just been such incredible confusion in the community that has led a lot of families to leave the charter. So you're saying that the charter hasn't been successful, but I think that the narrative from the district has not helped enrollment at the charter. it's been 2 years of people leaving because of the lack of stability and this talk of closure.
And the board unanimously voted to move Alta Vista to ED Kane in January. And that was found to be unpalatable by a lot of parents, and we wouldn't have been able to do things like putting in the playground and other things. And Principal Wilson spoke to that. She spoke to the other concerns that the families had about moving to ED Kane. So
Because we never asked the families where they wanted to move. I mean, that's the problem. During I feel like Alta Vista was such there was no attention, there was very little attention given to Alta Vista in the planning process for the FRIP. Essentially, there was discussion about Alta Vista could go to Skyridge. That was the recommendation of the principal. I know she speaks to families like in an anecdotal way, but I've heard from a lot of frustration from Alta Vista families that they just wanted more kind of planning involvement. I mean, what makes us say that Alta Vista ever even had to move? Couldn't there have been a different approach where the district worked with the charter to try to make it solvent, since the district is ultimately responsible as a dependent charter and as the authorizing body to find a way to limit the expenses that the charter can incur? I know it's very enrollment driven, but yeah, I think that there's been, the families there don't feel like they've had the chance to weigh in on where we would go next. And that's why, we make a misstep. I mean, think about, I want to take you back to that board meeting where we made the decision. It was after midnight that we finally got to the Alta Vista option. The idea to be at EV Kane made sense because we were looking for a more central location, the potential for a kind of a pseudo K-8. I think it was a bit of an offering to those families from Rock Creek whose school had been closed, that if it gave them a choice of going to Auburn Elementary or EB Kane, if they had students at EB Kane already. It was something that made sense after midnight that night. But I don't know that we'd really checked in with Alta Vista families or people likely to enroll in Alta Vista about whether or not they wanted that.
Clerk Brickler, I think you've been in touch with Alta Vista families for years now, correct?
Not on a systematic, I'm not surveying them. There's a difference between talking to people in the hallway and.
So, well, we just did a survey and now you've rejected the results of the survey.
I didn't reject them. I thought that what we learned was that there were similar numbers of families who wanted Alta Vista as a first choice, who wanted Auburnell as a first choice, who wanted Skyridge as a first choice. And that most of the families who responded, who wanted Alta Vista, wanted it to go to Rock Creek.
So I'm wondering if this is a good time to make a motion and just find out where to make a motion on this item. I mean, because we're having the same discussion, and I just wonder if it's just time to make a motion and see where we are.
I agree. We're keep going around and around, and I don't think we're deserting those families. In the district that wants a charter. There's some great charters in our area in the vicinity that families have already been leaving to, and they're going to continue to leave to if they want that charter experience. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and move and make a motion to dissolve the charter.
I second the motion. And this is not a resolution.
No, it's not. In the next board meeting. And I'm sorry, in the resolution, you stated to close it. There's nothing that says in here, if we keep it open, where we're going to put it. Is that not even a part of any of this discussion?
To dissolve the charter.
I'd like to make an alternate motion. I think at the very least, rather than considering closure, I need to get to my motion, I know, but my minimum threshold, or what I would like to see is that we at the very least allow the charter to operate as a non-classroom based program. That is an option available to us. That means that we're not dissolving and revoking the charter. We're letting it operate in a non-classroom based homeschool model. And it gives the opportunity to kind of regroup and figure out what is it that Alta Vista, how can Alta Vista be an asset to the district? Could there be a dual language immersion program that's developed? That takes time. So as an alternate to revoking the charter, I would like to see at the very least a non-classroom based option considered. Because we're going to know May 17th whether or not we can go beyond the 20% of in-seat. It would be so helpful if we had that information tonight.
And that's after we have to make staffing decisions and layoffs, correct?
Correct.
But a homeschool based, we don't need certain teachers, right? This is very minimal.
Yeah.
You'd have like a master teacher, like it's a very minimal amount of.
But we're also limited in the number of students that we can take. Based on
Until May
And seat.
17th, but if we resolve.
But
until we
if-
get that determination.
If they determine in favor.
We were
Um,
told it was a slam dunk by our council at the last time it was discussed.
And if we dissolve, we just put Blue Door into our district and we're not,
Benefiting.
we're now competing. So as a homeschool base, it allows, gives us
For
that
the
option.
non-classroom based, that was dissolved, correct, Principal Wilson? Then you,
No, it's, we just included it when we, there's an option for a homeschool program
Okay.
within the charter. It has three
the home-
programs.
so the home study was discontinued,
But-
copy.
Yeah,
and
but
the
it's
hybrid.
20% of the in-seat enrollment.
Until we hear from the State Board of Education on May 17th.
Hopefully, I mean, if the state allows us to have more than 20%.
Who was it that told us it was a slam dunk? That be approved? Was it Bill Schutz?
I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure who said that, but I can tell you that I'm leery of operating from someone telling me that it's a slam dunk only because, until you have it in your hand in education, things can change. And I've learned that through programs.
So
So
can I ask, what is the consequence of keeping this open as a homeschool? I'm sorry, what's the proper terminology?
Non-classroom based.
Non-classroom base. What's the consequence if we decide we want to make it a non-classroom base and we don't get that? Nothing? Or I mean,
it would be fiscal. You want to.
we receive zero funding, but is
It-
that like a mark against us? Because we're
Well,
helping
well,
our fiscal responsibility.
It would be because we would receive no money from the state of California for those students, meaning that the charter would operate with zero funds incoming from the state of California.
Do you need funds to run if we're not really running? I mean, is there
that like
really a
making it
bad?
Well, yeah, I mean, at a minimum, we would need to have enough to pay a teacher or just to pay anything at that point, or even to run the homeschool program of $10,000 a year. So we'd be running at zero funding. And that's the key is as I had stated before in the prior meeting is, it would have to be up to the board's risk tolerance of how much over 20% you want to take the chance on losing an ADA. And my recommendation, of course, with our current fiscal status and our letter of going concern, that not be a gamble that the district choose to take.
Wait, I don't understand why we're using the word gamble. I'm saying that as an alternative to revoking the charter, that you allow it to operate in the upcoming year as a non-classroom based program. We're going to know in a month whether or not we can have an unlimited number of non-classroom based students in the program. If it turns out, like over the summer, that we didn't get the funding determination, that we have zero students, then you don't hire a teacher, right? That it kind of just stays dormant until that we wouldn't be incurring costs if we're not offering a program.
Well, I mean, we would. So as we talked about, that's past our date for revocation of any of the layoff notices. So we would have to lay off staff. So then if we chose to go forward as just a strictly non-classroom based, first of all, we'd have to make sure we have somebody in place to start that program up. We have to get things in place in order to get the software, make sure we're set up to send out non-classroom based funds. Right now, we're only at a guarantee that we can take 20% of whatever's in seat. So if that reduces, it actually reduces down from the 14. So what happens is if we move forward, then we actually have, we are choosing to lay off staff because of a closure of school. If we're not closing that school and then we revoke the layoff notices, then we have staff and we have no school.
Will we lose any revenue base by closing our actual school? Will we be losing any revenue?
I'm confused.
If we close our classroom-based schooling,
Mhm.
where will the loss of our revenues outweigh? I don't know how to put this into a question, but I'm basically, I really do believe that with the evidence we've been given of the possibilities of everything happen, and I know you guys don't like possibilities, but that's what our school is all based on, possibilities. The possibility of getting 80 or 70 to 100 homeschool students should allow us some leeway.
Well, again, that would be the risk that the board would need to take, whether or not we got approval for that. Because it was, again, it's based on 20% of your in-seat classrooms is what you can do for non-classroom based. So if we're given the grace to go above and beyond that, then it becomes, do we operate as just a strictly non-classroom based? Bless you. And most operate both, as you've seen, as hybrids. So that question then becomes is, do we want to take the chance on whether or not we would do that? And then again, like we said, we're running off the possibility of, are we going to have 70 to 100 families if we're allowed to go over 20% of seated that all of a sudden flock to Alta Vista?
And I'm concerned generally that trying to do that when we see survey numbers where we've got 20 that say 20 people responded they're interested in a hybrid program. Are we making the decision to keep Alta Vista open for our own egos or to benefit adults? Or are we making decisions that's best for the students who have other options, PCOE, other charters in the area that have these programs in place that are competitive? And, I haven't used the word gamble, but what I am seeing is I'm hearing an argument based on a lot of ifs, ands, and maybes and hopefullys. And that's not firm ground to make a decision on.
I'd like
So
you to
I-
clarify how there's an ego component to this. I mean, I think that it's really about trying to, it's high up in our strategic plan is a value of offering different modes of education to students. I think the future of education is more kind of flexibility. We see programs all around us that are thriving, that are, operating with a homeschool model or a hybrid model. I know you've spoken against the hybrid model, but I don't know why we would shut the door when we currently have a charter in place. That it would be really difficult to obtain a charter again if we revoke the charter tonight. It would be a tremendous amount of work to obtain a charter again. Anyway, it's a whole process. So isn't there some way to make the charter work so that it helps us attract more students? That's one of our objectives, is to increase enrollment, to offer choice to families. We're eliminating all of that if you revoke the charter tonight.
I think our families in our area have been choosing. They've been voting with their feet and voting with their enrollments. And that's why less than half the students who would be eligible in our district, as we discussed a few months ago, go to schools in our district in AUSD. So they've been making decisions.
This is my
So-
last question. Oh, go.
Okay, well, I was going to take us back to process because I just want to make sure that we're following the process. So a motion was made and seconded, and then another motion was made.
Yeah, and
So
I'm
where are
sorry,
we
I
in
did-
this? We need to get back to just where we are in the
Are we still-
process.
Don't we have clarifying questions on the motion made?
We have two, yes, but
Okay. I just
Okay.
have one more
But
clarifying.
there's been
question.
some discussion. Yeah. So there was a motion and then a second,
Mhm.
and then there was a second motion. And so I just want to make sure that the discussion and then the questions, it gets confusing, and I don't want the public to lose track of what's going on.
No, I appreciate that.
I just have one last question, so it's up to you if you want to take that now.
I mean, I think if it's clarifying question to the motion she made.
It
then
is a
please.
clarifying question to her motion, because I think,
So the
ahead.
clarification, the motion, Clerk Bickler moved to make Alta Vista a non-classroom based only for the next school year. Is that correct?
Yes.
and my question to that is, what happens if we do get the results that we asked for May 17th, but we've closed our charter? What happens then? We just lose out, or like, what's the? If we have no charter and we get that passed, what happens?
I guess it's just irrelevant at that point.
Would you speak in the mic, please?
Sorry about that. I guess really then the question is, I mean, would we be losing out on that? And I mean, of course, then this goes back to possibly. I don't know of any way to really guarantee how many non-classroom based or homeschool families would enroll for this coming school year, or how many might enroll the next school year.
I have questions, but I told you that was my last one. So what's the next in the process?
The clerk Brickler's motion needs a second. And if you
I
want to,
second that motion.
if you wanted to restate it in your terms, not the way that I just,
No, it's fine because it wasn't a tightly worded motion. The other, point of clarification, I tried to get some information over email and I don't think this is well understood is there's some ed code language about moving a charter school and about what it means to lease a site and the procedures that would have to take place in order to lease a site. And I think we really need some clarity around the process that we followed and whether or not we can even just pick a charter up and move it. So there's language in ed code 47614 that says that the school district shall make reasonable efforts to provide the charter school with facilities near to where the charter school wishes to locate and shall not move the charter school unnecessarily. And I know there's some clarification that, perhaps, it's not a problem to lease a site because even though our board policy says that if you want to lease a site, you have to go through this extensive process.
Can I pause you just for a quick second? So to switch track to leasing a site, I'm just wondering if that would be something that we could add to a future agenda item to discuss the lease of the site.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to make it a new business, but it has some relevance to this discussion, is that I'm not certain that we followed board policy and ed code. And it would be really helpful to clarify whether or not we did. So
Whether or not we can legally move the charter school. Is that what you're saying?
right, or what the ed code says about moving the charter.
So I believe that to move the charter, Diana, Principal Wilson, she had to fill out the new address on the charter. Do you want to speak to that or am I nailing it?
I know we made a material revision to move the charter to this site.
And she changed the address when the
Right.
board voted to move it to E.B. Kane. The address was changed. That was the material revision. Thank you for the vocab there. And then Principal Wilson, is there anything I missed?
No, and I might have missed part of the question because I was losing my focus for a minute, but my understanding is that an authorizer can put a charter school wherever it has space and wherever it pleases when it's authorizing the charter. We did the material revision back in January, and that change of address was made because the decision was to relocate us to E.B. Kane. So currently our charter says that the space we will occupy in 23-24 is E.B. Kane. So if that changes, we have to do another revision to the charter to change the address.
Yes. And from my understanding, that's an easy revision.
What was that?
But from my understanding, that's an easy process.
Yes, it is. Because we've already updated all the legal language last time, so this would just be the address change.
So I mean, ideally, I think where the charter, if it received the proper support, where it would best be served is at its current site. That's what most families want, is just to be able to stay where they are at Oak Street. And I just wish that we had the opportunity to support the charter where it is and to make it, since it's our responsibility as a governing board to make it solvent where it is.
and
So-
how long was the PRIP committee working on this issue, among others?
For quite a while, but Alta Vista was not the main area of focus.
That was something that the board at the time directed the PRIP to look at. and their recommendation was to move Alta Vista to Skyridge, correct?
That was based on Principal Wilson's recommendation.
So, but the board did put, board did assign or did task the district to create a committee to investigate this. They went through that due diligence, they went through those steps, and they provided a recommendation to this board. This board then went against that recommendation, tried something else, it didn't work. And then when we went to revisit this at our last meeting, there was other questions. The board wanted to see a survey. The board wanted to see that the principal and the district had been doing everything they could to try to increase enrollment. And they did that. Everything that the board has asked the district and Alta Vista to do, it appears that they have done. And we still haven't hit the numbers that would be necessary to make it solvent at a site. And it seems like we've gone past the opportunity to try something new.
I think if you look at the survey though, as per what Sarah was saying, that people do want Alta Vista, and it was just spread out at 3 different ideas, but the total of that actually equals how many students will be participating at Auburn Elementary and Skyridge. So
and each one of those is a different option though. If we look at the second preference, right? First preference was Alta Vista at Rock Creek, and then second preference was Alta Vista at Rock Creek, with a hybrid of up to 30. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Alta Vista at Skyridge was number 1 for the second choice. So it doesn't seem like it is. Yes, Alta Vista is the number, it approximates the others, even though it still is below it. That's 80, 120, 130.
I think I counted
150.
140.
So right about the same, right? It approximates it. But that is spread out over multiple sites and a hybrid and a homeschool option. So though it's not analogous because it's different sites. And
I
there
know,
are
so
probably
that was
people in each
poor
of those.
survey design though, that's making this more challenging right now. I guess my desire is for Alta Vista to have the opportunity to continue as an in-seat program, grow the non-classroom based. I don't know which site is the best site for them to do that from. So really the primary motion I wish to make is to allow Alta Vista to continue operating. I can make a recommendation about a site, but you can tell from our survey results that based on the questions that we asked, most people wanted to go to Rock Creek.
So you're making a third motion, and that would be to keep Alta Vista operating as an in-seat charter with location to be determined.
While growing the non-classroom based. You need the 2, I think, at this moment to make it solvent. I don't want to miss the opportunity if there are over 100 students that are Auburn AUSD students that take classes at Blue Door that are part of a homeschool program. I don't want to miss the opportunity to invite them to be part of our district.
So can you repeat that one more time, just so I have the whole motion?
I mean, it's essentially allowing the charter to stay as it is. But I'm open to the question of where it would best be located. Okay. So I think you end up starting with the most recent motion.
Yeah, that's.
Yes, I think what the CBO is trying to clarify though is that essentially that would be a no vote on the first motion.
Yeah, because I
But-
have 3 now. I have the initial, and then I have the second one or the one that you made, and then now I have a second one. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm capturing everything
Yeah.
accurately.
It's not quite a no vote, though. It is a little different.
Okay.
So.
I second, sorry.
Right. Are there any clarifying questions on the third motion? Any of the motions so far? Okay, on motion 3, can I see the language, please? Okay, motion 3, the Auburn Union School District Board will allow the charter to operate, will allow Alta Vista Community Charter to operate as a non-classroom. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
This is 3 now.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
I see. Motion to allow Alta Vista Community Charter to continue operating as it is. All in favor?
Well, I think that an important piece of that for fiscal solvency is the non-classroom based
Okay,
component.
that's what I was asking for
Okay.
clarification. And then when you clarified, you left that part off, so I just left it off. as
My
well.
apologies.
So that's, I didn't want to get too confused. So and continue to grow the non-classroom based, you said?
While growing
While
non-classroom
growing,
based.
thank you.
Yeah.
Principal Wilson, I just wanted to thank you for standing up there and being ready. I saw you walking away. I just want to thank you.
All right, on the motion to allow Alta Vista Community Charter to continue operating as it is while growing non-classroom based programs. All in
Do
favor?
we have kind of is it location to be determined? Yes.
I mean, that's, I think that's
Yeah.
essentially operating as it is right now.
Okay.
So all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay,
Nay.
the motion fails. And on the second, Auburn Union School District Board will allow the charter to operate as, and I want to clarify this language too.
Thank you.
So I think we said, I think your motion was that the board would allow Alta Vista Community Charter to operate as a strictly non-classroom based program.
I don't know if I want to say it that way because,
I think that is what you did say, though.
okay.
Can you just take strictly out?
Well, so the way that a lot of the non-classroom based programs operate, they can still, it kind of flips the ratio. So if
Okay, well, I may have.
there is a-
accidentally
Take
reading
strictly
back to you.
out.
I just,
Okay.
yeah,
But-
because it can, there's an opportunity to provide some in-seat even within a non-classroom based model.
Okay, I took it out.
Can you repeat that motion?
Absolutely. The motion, Auburn Union School District Board will allow the charter to operate as a non-classroom based program. Right. Are there? No, we did.
We did. We
Yes,
have a second.
Trustee Ross. All in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Nay.
Nay. It wasn't in that one.
You can motion.
Okay. So
Sorry, I was asking trustee Dowd, as she had made a comment about allowing Alta Vista to have a home somewhere and to let it. It's like,
I was emphasizing how it should have been settled already. Yeah, and it seems like we keep on backtracking to that instructor.
well, because we were
Trying to
told by
solve it.
administration that we couldn't, it didn't make sense to go to EB Kane. So I feel like we were being asked to come up with an alternate location for. So where do you see it having a home?
Honestly, I think that out of all of the options, it does make sense for Skyridge. Basically, it would be in their district if we were to split up the districts or whatnot. That would be where I would have emphasized it 2 months ago.
Some families are
because
saying on the
that's-
survey that they want that they want
Yes.
to go to
Yep.
Skyridge.
Actually, yeah, that was.
and where to put Alta Vista is not what is on the agenda item tonight. We were having to look at to keep the charter open or close the charter going forward for reasons that have been discussed over the last several months for several hours. Many questions answered by Principal Wilson after extraordinary attempts to increase enrollment, to advertise to our communities, to advertise to our families. And so that's the decision that we face tonight, is getting back to the first motion now, which is to dissolve the charter. All right.
If you dissolve the charter, at what point will the charter LEA have the opportunity to have its own legal counsel?
We are the charter LEA, is that correct?
No, the
Oh,
LEA
yeah,
is
that's right. I-
just the
Yes,
local educational agency. We are the authorizer and we are the governing, or the district is the authorizer. We are the governing board for the charter. But it's still my understanding that a charter as an LEA has certain rights, and one of those is to have independent legal counsel. Like that there could be a, I don't know. I don't know that I agree that we can just revoke the charter. It's not my understanding of how this works.
And that is noted. When we look back at the state of California's page on closing a charter, the first line said that it may be closed voluntarily.
So who is representing the LEA then?
This governing board is making the decision to close or not to close the charter voluntarily. Right, and the first motion is to close Alta Vista Community Charter. All in favor? Aye.
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 And those opposed?
Nay.
Right, the ayes have it. Motion passes. Okay, moving forward. Item 11D, approval of licensed vocational nurse job description, student support. Is there any public comment on that agenda item?
Okay, the district has been contracting out for licensed vocational nursing services and would like to cut costs by bringing this position in-house. The LVN position supports the unique needs of our students with severe medical needs. Administration recommends approval of the LVN job description.
And are there any questions on that item?
I guess I would just say it's, it's challenging to think about offering pink slips to so many, or not offering, giving pink slips to so many individuals while bringing in new staff. But I see this as an effort to try to address our increasing special education costs. And I appreciate that it's an effort to try to bring services in-house. So, do you have any comments related to that duality and how challenging it is to be creating new positions at a really difficult with the difficult financial position that we're in?
Mhm. And this is, it's hard to kind of like separate those, right? But this is an IEP driven service. So this is something that is written into a student's IEP where they need that due to the intensive medical needs that students have. We provide that LVN support. So we actually don't have to place that student outside of our district. And so in essence, reducing that cost as far as placing a student out, reducing that cost of using an in-house LVN versus a contracted LVN is a savings. So that's how that is different.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Any additional comments or questions? Clarifying questions? All right, I move that we approve the licensed vocational nurse job description.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? No opposed. Motion passes. Motion carries. All right, moving to item 11F, approval of resolution 22-23-19. Is there any public comment related to that agenda item? Okay.
Okay, this resolution outlines the criteria for determining the seniority of certificated employees hired the same day. So we had this on the agenda last time, if you remember, but we had it on in the wrong form. So now it's back to you as a resolution. Administration recommends approval of resolution 22-2319.
Great catch on that one last month, Clerk Brickler.
Oh.
Is there any clarifying questions on this? Right. And it is a resolution. If you please conduct a roll call vote.
Trustee Ross, trustee Brickler, aye. Trustee Dowd, aye. Vice President Wedge,
Aye.
President Holt.
Aye. Oh. I suppose we didn't have a motion.
Yeah.
Thank you. We didn't put a motion forward before conducting the resolution or the roll call vote.
Okay,
So I move.
should we do that all over again?
Yes, I move that we approve resolution 22-23-19.
I'll second it.
All right, let's take a roll call vote. Trustee Ross, trustee Brickler, I, trustee Dowd, Vice
Aye.
President Wedge, President Holt.
Now the motion carries. Thank you. Kirsten. Okay, moving to agenda item 12A, school site reports. Is there any public comment on school site reports?
Oh,
All right.
Sorry, not public comment. I would like to comment on them when I
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to personally recognize and thank Principal Fischetti because she added so much detail to her report, and I really appreciate that. And I also wanted to celebrate her designation as a trauma-informed administrator. There have just been so many amazing events happening at all of our school sites. Sorry. This is so unrelated, but this has nothing to do with the Picky Eaters program, but I really could use that for my kids. So I really wanted to go to that one. There's just universally across the sites, there's the PBIS recognition of each of the sites. All the MTSS data roundtables, your hard work on completing CASP and LPAC testing. Sorry, I started off like feeling, kind of wanting to celebrate all the things that are happening, and it's really heartbreaking. Sorry, Evie Kane. I watched the video on Facebook of the science fair, and it was amazing to see Evie Kane over and over again. It almost seemed like it was like a blooper or a joke because of the way that your students swept those awards. Like the announcers were kind of like rolling their eyes like Evie Kane again. I'm looking forward to the open house tomorrow. Really looking forward to the Rock Creek Fiesta. I'm so impressed by the Roadrunner News Network and just all of the before and after school clubs that your school has created. Skyridge, I love seeing how dedicated your parents are to all of your activities, but things like the garden and the way that the Placer County Master Gardeners are utilizing your site as a pilot for how schools can implement garden programs. I really wanted to go to your science fair and your star party. That sounded incredibly fun. And we've been having a lot of fun using the makerspace at Alta Vista.
Sarah kind of mentioned all the great things that are going on. So thank you, Sarah. If you haven't checked the Roadrunner News, though, I highly suggest you guys check that out because it's pretty cute. And science, Evie Kane, I am so impressed with you. I am just so impressed with what's going on here. I just can't thank you enough for everything you're doing in Alta Vista. I loved reading your report. I loved seeing everything on there. So I just wanted to echo Sarah's sentiment, and very impressive with everything going on. It's just very impressive again that our teachers and staff are keeping their heads to the game.
You can feel the compassion. I love that. You can feel the compassion that each school shows and the love.
All right, so reports are fantastic. Moving to agenda item 13. Board governance and board direction requests. Looking forward to these updates. All right, so the first is regarding the lead testing in Alta Vista.
And I will let CBO talk about that. CBO Leslie, CBO with no name. Yes.
Oh, sure. Okay, just a quick update. Okay, so where we're at is we've went ahead and replaced fully two. We just got the parts in this morning for the three other items at Alta Vista. So those will be replaced shortly. And I think the only hiccup we've had is we had ones that were replaced in the kindergarten. Is that where it was at? And so what we've had to do is, because they're bagged for testing right now, is we've brought in bottled water. Sorry, I was moving quick. And we're having a hand washing station delivered.
Yes,
Okay.
the report had reported the faucets on the right as being one that had elevated levels, but they're both on the right. So we weren't sure which one they meant. So we bagged both of them, replaced both of them. And then TKK has been having a hard time without running water in their classroom. So we are bringing in a station for the next 3 weeks because that's the time period we have to wait.
Absolutely. So they've been kind of making do, but I know that we've had bottled water come in and we've just contracted for a hand washing station to come in as well.
Are there any questions on the lead testing? All right.
Are we planning on retesting after it's all installed and, okay. That's what I was.
How often do we test all our sites?
Currently, it's not a requirement to have regular lead testing. There's legislation being proposed to include that. However, our supply is tested regularly by PCWA and NID respectively. What we have done though is, different licensing for different areas, and that's how this got caught as we discussed. But in light of that, we've went ahead and expanded to do some sample testing at all of our sites under my direction, so that we will be expending money for that. But I think it's something just timely, so we're a little ahead of the legislation, I guess. So as we're getting those results in, we'll identify any other areas that could be of potential elevated levels, and then, of course, same process, those would be replaced. And if we identify any, I'm going to move forward and just have entire sites tested at that point, like I did with Alta Vista, just to be safe.
Great. Thank you. Okay, moving to agenda item 13B then, the delayed school start date.
So the board requested the feasibility for us to report back on the feasibility of starting school with a delayed date. So in other words, not on the Wednesday that we anticipated to come back, but a couple days later. At this time, the district believes that there's not enough time before the start of school to really pull the families and allow for that delay start at this time. We could do it, but I don't know that it would be effectively. And after a rough year, we want to start the year out as effectively as possible.
Seeing as there are no questions, moving to 13(1)C, the IB program.
So I spoke with Principal Balsana Wright, Dr. Balsana Wright, and Principal Mayberry. They are going to work together to bring a presentation to the board in June.
And is that regarding any particular school? That's just Evie Kane, right?
So Principal Balsana Wright has quite an extensive background in IB, and so she's going to be providing her expertise in the program. Principal Mayberry is excited to consider running an IB program here at Evie Kane. So they're going to work together to present the information on like what the scope of work is to become an IB school. I wouldn't limit the future to say that it would only be at Evie Kane, but I believe that Principal Mayberry is interested in looking at that currently. I mean, it takes time to get that up and running. It's going to take a few years.
And I believe moving to 13(A)(2), then new requests. Clerk Burgley, did you make a request earlier in the evening?
Request was that we go back to our past practice of reading public comments. The other request is to understand how, what the rules are around leasing facilities.
Okay, and is that a wish by the majority of the board?
Two different ones.
Yeah, it's two different ones. So regarding the first reading public comment, that's if you could, I think maybe to clarify your question, just how would we need to make that decision? Would that need to be a board governance policy? Because I think that would bear discussion and debate because there are merits to it and there are arguments opposed to it. And I think that's something that was also discussed at the governance workshop that occurred in January. Was both public comment and soliciting public comment from people who are not presently at the meeting. So
We've been doing it for years. That I think that's the timing of when the three of you as new trustees is that you came on board right during this really tumultuous time with really long meetings, with hours of public comment. You came in at a time that's completely unusual for us. So for, as long as I think anyone could email, we've been reading the emailed public comments is my understanding.
So would you like me to look into the process of that and bring that information back to the board to have a discussion about?
yeah, I mean, you're sure that wasn't something that we brought about during COVID when we moved everything remotely?
Well, frankly, we usually don't receive that many public comments. I mean, it's usually
That's not what I asked, though.
right. I just want you to appreciate that for the longest time, it was 5 people plus a few staff in the DO sitting there with nobody in the audience and the occasional emailed public comment that we would read. So it's a completely different scenario than we've had a lot more engagement, obviously, with these tough decisions. And so it's what is out of the norm is not reading the public comments that are emailed. That's completely new as of December, January, just because of the volume. And so once the volume goes down, I don't see why we wouldn't return to our past practice. We've always, not that we have to do things like the way we've always done it just because, but because I think it's a mechanism to make sure people can be heard.
So it sounds like that's something, though, that we need to, that wasn't agendized tonight. So I think it's something that probably needs to be agendized then and have the board discuss it. So maybe it's even just a agenda item at a future.
Sure. I guess I'm just pointing out that I don't know that there was ever a board action taken to stop reading the comments. I think so why does there have to be a board action to resume reading the comments?
Okay. And, there was also, we made the decisions in the time in January and at other meetings to try to hear out, in some cases, hours of public comments far beyond the board governance policy of 20 minutes or 7 speakers.
Yeah.
And adding to the end. So, I don't think that also required board action. I think I've looked at everybody for a nod, but I don't know that we formally acted on that either.
Yeah.
So the request then is your request to clarify what we would need to do that? Or you?
No, I'm just requesting that we go back to our past practice.
Okay.
Okay, so then I will make that an agenda item and bring any information that's relevant to that for your discussion and then
That seems like a lot of extra work on the part of the administrative team, though.
It does, but there's clearly debate, at least between you and I right now on that. And that seems like something that should be agendized and be able to go to public comment. All right, the second new request from Clerk Brickler was to get a briefing on the rules regarding leasing facilities. Is that
okay. And I saw at
Mhm.
least 3 nods. Okay. All right.
I have one request. I heard from a couple teachers that they had put in a resignation before non-reelect. So can we maybe just go back and check out what that looked like or what that process is?
So we already have, and we're already working with HR and with legal counsel about that.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And I actually did follow up with people that brought it to me.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also want to, it was a formal request to have a resource fair. And I do want to just thank your team for what they have put together, and given our stress and everything that's going on, the plausibility of making it happen this semester may not be possible, but I really do want to take a second to thank you because you heard it, your team put it together. Kim is just phenomenal at helping make this. So I do want to just acknowledge that because that was a past request.
Thank you.
I love that everybody was so excited about organizing it too.
Are there any additional new requests? All right, then this meeting will be adjourned at 8:53.
For all your answers. Yeah, I have them too. So